Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns, the Sales Leaders Playbook. Today we welcome to the Soap Studio, Scott Sinatra, former CRO at Glint. In this episode, we discover the mastery of walking away from a deal and how sales leaders build value proposition. This is his playbook.
Edition series, the 33 CxOs, we investigate one of the greatest success stories in the history of software sales. 33 CxOs learnt the playbook from one man, John McMahon, a legacy which stretches back to the late 90s at a company called PTC. They were later reunited at BladeLogic, which was acquired by BMC. What happened next was truly remarkable. These CxOs went on to become the most prolific sales leaders in the software industry. They've raised over 22 billion in VC funding. They contribute to 4% of software turnover globally, 26 unicorns, 8 decacorns, and the companies they drive have a combined valuation of 230 billion. At Hunters and Unicorn, we're revealing their playbook.
Welcome to another episode of Hunters and Unicorns. I'm Simon Kutis, and this is my co-host Ollie Kune.
Hey everyone.
And we are absolutely delighted and honoured to welcome Scott Sinatra. Welcome, Scott.
Hi guys, nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Welcome to the show.
So, welcome to the show, Scott. So, Scott, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Obviously, first of all, a massive congratulations. It's been a huge, almost 6 years. Obviously, you've recently left Glint following the acquisition from LinkedIn. You were formerly the kind of head of global sales and revenue for Glint. So congratulations for that. Quite a journey.
Thank you very much.
Great. So Scott, obviously we're going to talk quite a lot about Glint because I know that it was a very important part of your kind of journey in really crystallizing and incubating a lot of the amazing things that you learned from the early parts of your career. But actually where we want to start is right from the very beginning. So if you can just tell us, Scott, how did you get into software sales?
My first software sales job was at PTC.
Okay.
I remember vividly reading an article in Forbes Magazine where it talked about this elite team of sales athletes that were capturing market share in a new industry at an alarming rate. And I was really captivated by wanting to join and be a part of a team like that. I had some friends there, which was an introduction into the company anyway. And I took a job as an individual contributor just to get in because I knew I had a lot to learn. And I knew I was going to be surrounded by some serious sales athletes. And that, in fact, was true.
A real baptism of fire.
Well, that's an understatement. PTC has a very rigorous sales onboarding and training program. They had, the methodology nailed. They had the qualification process nailed. All of those really important aspects of running these teams. And they warn you in advance of coming to onboarding that there's a lot of prep work. Be prepared. It's an intense time. And I'm not sure I listened as fully as I should have going into the onboarding class at PTC. In fact, after day one, they pulled me aside and threatened to kick me out of the class because I was unprepared.
Wow.
I knew right then and there that I was, this is a place for me. And these were very serious folks who were on a very serious mission, but we're doing some really amazing things and I can learn a ton. And that was one of the things in my career that was one of the biggest eye-openers in terms of being prepared. And it's stuck with me to this day.
Brilliant. We've heard some fantastic onboarding and interviewing techniques used by some of the management. Do you remember who was it that interviewed you and what that interview was like?
Oh, not so much. It was, I remember going through a series of interviews locally. I was in Indianapolis, Indiana at the time. And some of those folks were my friends. So it wasn't as intense as it probably could have been.
Yeah.
I remember going down to Atlanta to meet with one of the VPs. And, I got asked some questions I'd never been asked before and was really put on the spot to try to be as smart as I possibly could. And I remember feeling like I didn't do so well. Right. So no great interview stories other than, I was dealing with a new level, a next level, type of company, a type of culture. I was really excited about it. I was a bit nervous about it, but really thrilled for the opportunity to learn and grow in that kind of an environment, which I did.
Why do you think that they took you on, Scott, in that phase of your kind of career and,
Well, I think I brought some experience to the table. It wasn't necessarily in software. I've been managing teams since I was 28 years old. So I was pegged early on in my career as, a high potential leader, and was put in those positions very early. What I really didn't know going into PTC was actually how to sell software. I was in the medical device business prior. And so, I talk a lot about leading from the front. It wouldn't have been appropriate or the right decision to put me in a management position at PTC right away. And I was fine with that. Let me go learn some new skills. Let me learn what software is all about. And then maybe potentially from there, I move up and through the organization. That was my mindset. And it was absolutely the right thing for them to do and the perfect thing for me to go through at that time. But they saw, some skill, they saw some experience, they saw that I managed teams and people and understood that. So I think that was part of the equation.
And how quickly did you pick it up, Scott?
There's a lot of trial and error, man. Not as quickly as I would have liked. I remember having to go through, and gaining a lot of scar tissue through the process of learning a sales process, and really internalizing how to leverage Medic the right way. I learned the value of, pipeline development and making sure that you are busy to the point of developing some courage in your forecast. There's just so many lessons from PTC, and I just remember those days looking to the left and looking to the right, and just the elite nature of the folks that I was getting to go to battle with every single day was really inspiring. These were people that were really accomplished, way better than me. And I was a sponge. It took me a while. Eventually, through a lot of scar tissue. And I always say scar tissue is a great teacher. Developed a lot of scar tissue at PTC on how to sell software the right way. One other comment there is, one of the things that I really liked about PTC was, in that Forbes article, it talks a little bit about, that the buyer, the customer doesn't necessarily know how to buy software. And it's our job as professional salespeople to teach them how to buy software, and in particular, our software. But that was a revelation for me, and something that has stuck with me, obviously, to this day.
Yeah, some strong foundations laid right there.
Yeah. So
moving on, early 2020, moved on to Datalink. Again, an individual contributory sales role? Was that a management role?
Yeah, I joined as an individual contributor. I quickly got moved into managing, and kind of parlayed my experience in selling software into selling storage area networks and kind of broad-based infrastructure systems for businesses. So yeah.
From there, moved on to, is it Moser IT Consulting, a consulting company?
Yeah, so similar in that Moser was a family-owned business, actually, doing IT consulting work in the Midwest, where I was living at the time. And I was hired in as a general manager. So I came in to basically run the business. So I took all my experience from PTC and from Datalink and my knowledge of infrastructure and all of those things, and parlayed that into actually going and running that business for a while.
And a 300% revenue growth.
Yeah.
Rumble right there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, sales execution became a thing, yeah. And company execution became a thing, and something that I became pretty adept at doing. So yeah, it was a good little run.
So nearly 5 years later, BladeLogic. Tell us about this day, the day you get a call. Give us a bit more insight.
Oh, well, my good buddy Paul McGrath, who I think is one of the 33 you guys have shouted out. He's a dear friend. He called me out of the blue one day. I'd been, selling into IT and had developed some relationships, in that world. He called me out of the blue and he said, "Hey, I've stumbled on, I think what he said is, we're getting the band back together. We're getting some of the band back together on this little piece of technology out of Boston." He said, I hope I'm not calling him out here, but he said, "I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never sold anything in this space before. Can you make an introduction into a customer, into an account?" And I was happy to do that. So I called a customer friend, and I, was able to set a meeting for him to go see my customer friends. And the customer called me that evening after their meeting and basically said, "Hey, 10 minutes into the conversation, it wasn't if we were going to buy it. It was, how much we could afford to buy right now." And I called Paul and I said, "Hey man, listen, you're really onto something here. I think you've got, the makings of something pretty special. Run hard and, get me in. Who do I need to talk to? That sounds really exciting." So the combination of some really interesting tech with that kind of PTC, team, I knew early on it could be really significant.
Yeah, because the early stage, the early stage part of BladeLogic, we spoke with Andy Sadler, and there was some challenges in the interim in the very, very early stages because of the messaging, right? And then as soon as you were able to turn that round, that was
a lot of trial and error, a lot of scar tissue. We didn't have, a big marketing team at all, working on any sort of messaging platforms or anything like that. We were figuring it out as we were going. We just knew we had something that, could help companies automate the way they were configuring servers. And the rest was up to us. So it was really sales driven and sales led, from that point, which was exciting, challenging, and ultimately fruitful. Yeah.
What was the momentum like? When the momentum started to build up, you're obviously around a lot of the old PTC guys.
Yeah.
Did you kind of see that fire start to ignite? Was it kind of slowly, or was it, how?
Well, there was a lot of
manifest?
There was just a lot of confidence in the team. We'd all been there, done that. We knew how to take what BladeLogic was and turn it into something, pretty special, right? As far as value of a company. And so, there was just it wasn't bravado. It was a ton of confidence that, we had the right people on the team executing at a high level, and that, we were going to be something pretty unique and special. And that's the way it turned out.
And then obviously this series is very much kind of a moment in time which focuses on 33 individuals who were with you, at BladeLogic, who have gone on to incredible, mind-boggling success, which is beyond comprehension. It's beyond statistical probability, as Brian Blond put it. Did you know that you were surrounded by this? Was it evident? Was everyone kind of? Did you even have a moment to kind of consider what was around you, or was it just kind of going with emotion?
It's a good question. Probably not at the time. Just knew we were surrounded by, really top talent. What that talent chose to do with their careers, later wasn't on any of our minds, I don't think. But obviously, we all learned something from those PTC BladeLogic days that has helped us immensely in our careers after the fact. I'm really proud of what we've done collectively as teams, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from these guys. It's been amazing.
Did you personally have a vision at that point, Scott? Did you say to yourself where you were going with your career? Did you?
No, not really. I never really thought about the C-suite until McMahon actually pushed me there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please elaborate.
Well, we were at BMC after the acquisition, and as John has so eloquently told the story, we made some significant changes at BMC to take a pretty stagnant company and turn it into another growth engine, if you will, in taking market share. Made a lot of changes to do that, but we implemented the playbook. And so we saw again firsthand how having the playbook and having the caliber of leadership spread around the globe can impact a company really quickly, which happened at BMC, when John was put in control. Well, when John eventually left, he reached out. He had been advising companies, and he made an introduction for me with the CEO and founder of Glassdoor. And, I took that meeting. John gave me the confidence and the mentorship that now was the right time for me to go take on that kind of responsibility. I was ready, and that I should go do that. And of course I said yes.
Scott, are you naturally a confident guy?
Yeah, confident, not arrogant, but I've developed confidence over the years. I think confidence gets developed, as you see success, as you implement things and you see them working out. I can see around corners a lot better today than I could have, 10 years ago, for sure. There's just, like I say, scar tissue is a great teacher.
Also, the kind of the belief and mastery. Do you think that also really helped you? Because there was an obsession of mastery at both PTC and BladeLogic. Yeah,
definitely. I was really confident. I've been really confident in sales process and in Medic. And those are two very important pillars to what I do as a sales leader. It's just so many lessons learned in implementing these types of processes. I will say though that these aren't cookie cutter. I think it's really important in any situation that you're in where you're leading something or you're building something, is to pay really keen and particular attention to all the nuances of the sale, of the industry you're in, of the environment you're working in, and modify the process and modify, the playbook to meet the demands and the needs of what you're doing at that particular time. There is no cookie cutter in my mind. There are elements of it that stay static, but I think I've been really good at adapting with a level of agility, what I've learned through all of these years, into all these new situations that I've been in to help grow and build these companies.
That's really interesting, Scott, because I think every single person we've spoken to have actually pretty much said that there's something similar or something along those lines. And it's not to discredit John McMahon. In fact, it's probably to the credit of the playbook that it is so adaptable, that it is a foundation that can be. But why do you think you are able to do that?
Well, I've seen it work. So, when you see things work at scale, it gives you a lot of confidence that, to make decisions moving forward. So, when I went to Glassdoor, I joined really early. I was the second sales leader there. So I joined at about $1 million in run rate business very early. I had a few salespeople, a few talented salespeople, in fact. A bit of a playbook, a bit of messaging, but what they really needed was, a more institutionalized way of thinking about opportunities, thinking about sales process, and training against all of that information. And so it's just codifying, if you will, what was needed in order to get all of the sales reps as productive as possible, while also informing what the hiring profile needed to look like. What kind of sale was this going to be? Was it going to be, small to medium-sized businesses? Was it going to be transactional? Was it going to be more enterprise? All that had to be learned. So you can't just take a playbook and just plop it into a situation. You have to be able to use it to the benefit of making really strong decisions about people, about growth strategies, about, how much you're going to sign up for the next year, all of those things, right? It's Glassdoor was a place where I was able to implement the playbook with some tweaks in order to adjust to what that business needed to grow really fast. And we did. I took it from $1 million to 20 million in 18 months. And it has everything to do with execution, but the execution starts with the backbone of the playbook.
Right. So John McMahon was obviously very influential, throughout your career. PTC, obviously BladeLogic. You've now mentioned Glassdoor as well.
Yeah.
Were there any kind of standout moments, or were there any kind of any kind of examples where, he's personally kind of taught you something that you've really taken with you?
Definitely. When we were at BladeLogic, I was working on a large deal at a pharmaceutical company. It was very early at BladeLogic, so the concept of what we were doing was just that. We were having to educate the market on what this stuff was, in fact, and what it could do for companies. So it was very early days. But we were able to get ourselves in a situation at this pharmaceutical company where they identified a project where the solution could potentially be started as a potential land and expand kind of a deal. Well, it was a lot of work educating, on this new concept that we were bringing to market. And, through that sales process, great salespeople should have a radar on, looking for signals in questions that they're getting or people that they're interfacing with on all of these different various meetings they're having with the customer. And that radar should really be honed on, who in the room has the power and the influence to sell for me when I'm not there. That's the definition of a champion. And I had the hardest time in this particular account identifying who could or would be a champion for us, as hard as I tried. So I called John one day and I said, hey, I've got something to run by you. I'm in a situation. How would you handle it? And I walked him through the fact that I just couldn't identify and didn't know I had a champion. And he told me, as only John can say it, just walk away. Just walk away from the deal and see what happens. I'd never done that before. You know, when you say that to somebody who's never done that before, they get nervous. What do you mean, you know, you want me to walk away? I've been working on this thing for 6 months. It's kind of the point. So he said, you know, just professionally walk away. So we talked through how to do that. And so what I did with this pharmaceutical company, it was a very rigid process, you know, communication through this RFP tool kind of thing, et cetera. And when the decision criteria came down in terms of what they were looking for in the solution, which we've been trying to negotiate for months now, it wasn't exactly the way that I needed it to look in order for us to win the deal, to be assured that we had the best chance at winning the deal. And so I wrote them a letter, wrote them an email, and basically said, you know, if this is the criteria you're going to use to make a decision, we respect your decision, but we're going to respectfully walk away from this opportunity today.
Just like that.
Just like that. And about 2 hours later, I got 3 phone calls from the customer, from different people at the customer, basically saying, what are you doing? You know, why are you leaving? You know, we need you in this process. We like you. You know, we like what you guys are doing. So that was, you know, that was the test. Walking away professionally is a great test to see where you stand in an opportunity if you don't clearly know. And that was John's point. So, I sent that letter. I get those phone calls. I tell the guys, you know, at the pharmaceutical company, I said, if you want us to stay included in the process, here's exactly how this decision criteria needs to read. Formalized. Because I knew if I could get that, we could lock out competition. We'd sole source this deal. It was ours. Procurement goes through process. They changed the criteria to suit us, but it still wasn't perfect. There were some alignment things in terms of the way things were laid out in that particular opportunity. And I took it one step further. I'm not sure John knows this. And I wrote him a letter, and I basically said, if this is the criteria you're going to use to make this decision, we're going to respectfully walk away. I did it twice. 2 hours later, I get a phone call. What are you doing? I said, it's not perfect. You know, here's why it's not perfect. You know, the competition's going to be able to angle, and they're going to be able to throw in some smoke and mirrors to be able to, you know, maybe get there. But, you know, if you do it this particular way, you're going to expose them, and you're going to see us for the strengths for what we're doing here. So they eventually.
Sorry, Scott. So is this you're defining how they should go about buying this from you?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now I have people on the phone that want to lock arms to figure out how to do this thing together. And they had the power and the influence to have these conversations behind closed doors when I'm not there. They were, you know, these guys, one in particular was a champion. I just didn't know it until I tested them. So, you know, long story short, we were able to sole source the deal against our top competitor, and you know, won a multi-million-dollar deal.
Incredible.
Thanks to John.
You must have a great poker face there, Scott.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, when the first time you do that, it is nerve-wracking. But to this day, it's something I teach as part of the playbook. When I'm doing deal reviews with sales reps, or we are, thinking about strategy in an account, I have taught the professional walkaway to great success. I can tell you that, sales people's careers have grown significantly through this one single tactic. And it's something that they use today, and really happy that they learned how to do it. That's part of the playbook for sure.
It's a tough time. It's a tough call though, isn't it? As you say, when do you, and in your opinion, the question to you here is at what point does that happen? The minute that one part of, medic doesn't fall in place?
Well, look, medic is a compass. If you're not sure exactly where you are in an opportunity, the answer is in medic. There's always this spot in a sales process, which I call the black hole of sales. And lesser experienced salespeople, they'll have used all of their leverage in that opportunity. They have no more chips to play, and they don't know what to do next. So they just wait for the customer to call them, with an answer on something, right? Medic gives you the things to go get, the things to go ask for, the things that you can go work on to ensure that you're qualifying as well as you possibly can on an opportunity. But the timing of how to use the walkaway kind of strategy is, in particular, is a great test for whether or not you have a champion or not. And that's when done well and done professionally, I have to say, it can be really effective.
So I think we've obviously then moved on from Glassdoor. We're obviously talking about a part, but there is a really interesting part in your career, which was obviously stepping up and doing an advisory role at Wiseline. I haven't obviously spoken.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah. Interestingly, the head of sales at Opsware, which was our competitor at BladeLogic, was at A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz at the time. Yeah. He was managing their executive briefing center, and Mark's part of the PCC.
Cranny.
Yeah, we're talking about Mark Cranny. So I get a call out of the blue from the CEO and founder of Wiseline, basically saying, "Hey, Mark Cranny suggested I give you a call. Would love to hook up and connect, and we're a young organization trying to figure it out. We've got a really hard charging head of sales. Would you mind coming in and just taking a look and seeing what we're doing, and we'll do a little bit of an advisory thing." And so yeah, that's how that worked out. It's interesting that it was from an Opsware guy.
and then the all famous most recent career, Glint, and what a 6-year journey that must have been, because you were there for just under 6 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, 5.5 essentially.
5.5 years.
Yeah,
which is a long time, right? You've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that. But you've joined January 2015, looking after worldwide sales and the revenue for the business. How did that introduction come about, and what can you tell us about that experience?
I got connected to Jim Barnett, founder and CEO, to have a breakfast and just have a chat, talk about what he's up to and what he's thinking about. And I hadn't met Jim before, and he's an amazing guy. He's 6-time CEO, two-time company founder. He was a VC. You talk about, being entrenched in Silicon Valley, I really wanted to meet this person.
Right.
And we talked, we hit it off. He was talking about what he was building. He talked about why he was building it, which was as important. The concept of Glint came about because, as leaders, he as a CEO, myself as running sales organizations, et cetera, one of the hardest questions for us to answer is how our team or how our people were feeling about work, about their boss, about how it's going. It was very hard to get really actionable feedback the way it had been traditionally done, which was usually an annual survey, which was hard to implement, even harder to action against, et cetera. So Jim, as being the entrepreneur that he is, saw an opportunity to solve a problem he was having. And a lot of us have, in terms of managing people. So right away, I connected with the vision and the purpose for what he and Gautam Kura, our co-founder, were building together. And, as I got to talking to Jim, he's just an amazing human being on top of being an amazing business person, which I was really drawn to. And so I really connected to that. And then I did a little bit more research into the space. And, it's a 30-year-old industry that's dominated by, consulting companies doing a lot of manual work and doing these annual surveys. And, companies are moving at the speed of light today, not on an annual basis. And, checking in one time a year with your employees just doesn't make any sense anymore. Somebody needs to go fix this. And we were the ones to go do that. And so I was really well aligned to what the mission was, and I was very passionate about it, and for me anyway, when I get passionate about what we're doing, if I can identify with the problem that we're solving, I'm way more effective, in selling to customers, in selling to future employees, in selling to investors, you name it, my charisma can come out at that point. So to speak. And so, Jim invited me to come in and lead the sales organization, or lead the early revenue organization. I joined as, one of the earliest employees in the company. I think it was employee number 7, 8, something like that. I joined during stealth, so nobody knew about Glint. As part of the process, I asked Jim to talk. I wanted to talk to some CEOs of some customers, early beta customers, and what they were seeing, in the technology and in the data. And I asked them for 4, thinking there's no way he's going to be able to give me 4. They're stealth. He did. They were all friends of his, but they were using the product. So I called all 4. They were really great with their time. And I asked some very specific questions about what is unique about what you are seeing in this data that you never had access to before. And please describe to me the value to the business in having this information as the leader of the company. Because for me, as the leader, as the sales leader, if I can get that, I'm onto something. And 4 out of 4, I got some very early signals that what was being built was solving a specific, a tough problem in a unique way, in a modern way, which I think was important. And so I joined the company at that point.
Wow. And going back, so sorry, because I think there was a really interesting point that you made, which is, one of your second pillars to your playbook is, and what's a really important role, is getting dirty. I think you phrased it, Scott.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
rolling up your sleeves, which by the sound of things is the start. But can you elaborate on that and what you meant by that?
You know, as sales leaders, we talk a lot about playbooks and about qualification process and all of those things. But at the core, the foundation of everything that we do, there are some really basics that have to be done first. You know, one of those is, you know, understand the sale. Understand what it actually takes to sell your product or service to a customer.
Yeah.
I've seen time and time again where a sales leader will come into an organization, they'll drive a desk, you know, they'll get third-hand information in terms of what the sales actually like, but to actually get dirty and get into the business and, you know, do a sale or many, you know, run multiple sales processes for the learning exercise, I think it is incredibly valuable. I don't know how a CRO can do the job without it. And what it does is, again, you talk about confidence. It gives you confidence, one, that, you know, you've lived through the sale from point A to point Z, from the time, you know, that you've reached out to a client to get that initial meeting to the time you've closed business. There's so much to be learned that then can be used to create the playbook. Right. Or to tweak the playbook that you've used in the past, because maybe what you were doing in the past won't specifically work in this particular situation. But you can't know that until you've actually done it. Yeah. So one, I think, you know, an important thing is, you know, you can only build a sales playbook off of your firsthand knowledge of the sale itself. So get dirty, roll up your sleeves, and do the deals, at least in the early stages, until you were able to scale and build out your teams, et cetera. The other part of the equation here is that it informs your hiring profile. You firsthand will then be able to see and understand what skills and experience level is going to be required in order to execute on that sale. And that can be very different, you know, company to company. So those are two really critical aspects of why to get dirty. Yeah. You know,
I suppose where you were quite fortunate there, Scott, is that from the very first stages in actually assessing the opportunity, by having access to these four, you know, customers, you were straight away at a position where you were understanding the messaging, getting dirty, and is that early enough, or is that what you mean, sorry?
Yeah, those calls with those CEOs were important just to illuminate the fact that they were getting value out of the data that was being provided to them, you know, vis-a-vis anything they've used before in their lives. But going through the actual sale and, you know, leveraging some of the things that you've learned through the years in terms of how to position the company, how to create messaging that gets you, you know, from a discovery call into a sales qualified opportunity, say, you know, those are really important steps in creating your sales process, obviously. You know, some companies might opt to go down the POC route, or, you know, want to benchmark their technology against competition. In some cases, you don't need to do that. Some cases, you don't want to do that because you don't clearly understand your unique or technical differentiation against, you know, your competition. But all of this can be learned firsthand if you experience it yourself. And as an experienced leader, you know, having done this for so long, it doesn't take as long for me to go in and kind of identify, you know, how to go build it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And by the way, all of this, you know, it just doesn't help the sales team. You know, as the head of revenue, it's my obligation, and as somebody that sits on the executive team, it's my obligation to share my firsthand knowledge of what's happening with the customer to our product teams, to our legal teams, to our customer success teams, to inform our strategy moving forward, and to get everybody on the same page as far as the dictionary of terms we're going to use, the process itself, and making sure everybody's clearly aligned in terms of what that looks like. And then from there, all of your KPIs that you're measuring on a very frequent basis flow.
Yeah.
So it is a serial procedural way of getting to, an operating rhythm. But you just can't get there. I just don't see a way to get there without having firsthand knowledge of actually how to do it.
It's so interesting because, especially when you're taking a really unique product, which is, fairly one of a kind, how many times does that message evolve through there, and how quickly do you need to get it right? Or is that an obvious answer?
I don't know. I don't know if there's many obvious answers. How quickly? That's a hard one. That is a hard one to answer.
Because then is it the case of, like a deal, is there a point where a CRO will have to turn around to himself and say, I can't get the messaging right. I get what you're saying, but like a deal, I've got to walk away from this.
Well, look, messaging is not, at least in my view, is not the sole responsibility of the CRO.
Right.
Right. So in every situation I've been in, I've locked arms with our head of marketing.
Yeah.
And together, collectively, we work on, and head of product, by the way, we work on brand, we work on what message we want to get out into the universe, how to position ourselves, uniquely against competition, doing all of the research that's required in order to understand competition, what we're up against, all of those things. So messaging is not solely the responsibility of the CRO. Yeah. In my opinion.
Do you know what? It's funny because you're the first person to actually have mentioned marketing in this entire podcast.
Wow.
Which is, I don't know whether that, there's a purpose to that.
I don't know. When you are able to link arms with a very capable head of marketing, magic can happen. I'll just say that. We definitely have that at Glint. Jim Bell, head of marketing, has been a great teammate. I will say one thing about Glint. I have nothing but positive to say about Glint and that entire experience. One of the things that Jim Barnett did really well was, he started from the point of view of building a really seasoned leadership team from the beginning.
Right.
So as a team, we've kind of been there, done that in all of our various roles across that team. And so we were able to collectively see around corners that lesser experienced teams might be able to see around,
Mm-hmm.
I had a ton of confidence coming in that, I was going to work with a head of marketing in Jim Bell that was supremely confident and competent and fun. I want to make sure to get a message across here that, building businesses is hard work. Remember to have fun, and join companies and be a part of teams who you respect and you appreciate for who they are and what they bring, to the company. We spend so much time together that, if I didn't like the people I was working with, it would be miserable. And that is definitely part of, how I think about selecting companies, as I go to work with them.
Just going back to the purpose and the vision of the business, obviously it's very much, geared at helping organizations understand what's going on within their businesses, but actually that's a core component of your actual playbook. So you kind of drink your own Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that for us?
Well, at Glint, it was our business. So it was my first introduction into actually getting any kind of data about what our team was thinking about, and that is a process in and of itself. If you have never received anonymous feedback about how it's going, it can be a bit unnerving. You're going to get some critical feedback in terms of process or in terms of interactions, or it could be any number of things in terms of what you've built or what you've done. But those are coaching and teaching moments, and a great listening opportunity for you to make sure you stay in tune with what the organization needs to be successful. It's gold, and we were doing it on a monthly basis and getting new insights from the team, on a regular basis in terms of where we should consider tweaking our strategy, where we should make some specific changes in what we were doing. Some of it were good suggestions that we didn't take action against. Some of it was very actionable and made a ton of sense for us to think about. So instead of a collective, 6, 7 of us in an executive conference room figuring this out, we had the collective of the company involved in the process of helping us, understand what it's going to take to build a great company. So we were really, we were active listeners to what our employees needed to be successful in their roles and to help them be their happiest and best self at work. I had never experienced that prior to Glint. I never had access to tools like that prior to Glint.
What kind of feedback was that giving you? Was that giving you operational feedback, emotional feedback, other feedback? What is it you were getting?
All of the above. It depends on what we were asking at a particular point in time. I remember vividly one piece of feedback I received. I had the SDR team under me at Glint as well, and there was a preponderance of commentary coming from that particular team about growth, about them wanting to grow. So in and of itself, you can make an assumption on what growth actually means. To the uninitiated, be careful how I say this, to the uninitiated, growth, you could assume that growth means, that these lesser experienced younger employees perhaps just want to get promoted. They want the next role, 3 months into the job. You could make an assumption, but you could be dead wrong about that. What I came to find out, so these were data points that you can action against and have further conversations with these teams. So this bubbled up as a topic that, was of concern. They weren't getting or seeing the growth opportunities in order to, to get better at their jobs, et cetera. So I had a meeting with them and I said, hey, I got some great feedback. You're talking about growth. Tell me a little bit more about what growth means to you. And it wasn't about getting promoted. It was about learning. They want to learn new skills. They want to, get to the next job. It's not about promotion. It's about skill development. And at that point, through a lot of active listening and just conversations with a team that all of us should be doing, we were able to create a curriculum to get them, into, kind of a growth situation where they were learning new skills. And we were developing a bench, from our SDR team that could eventually move into sales. That is, just one example of many, through data like this.
Wow. Power of data. So you've then smashed the US. US is going great. EMEA is now starting to pick up a bit. And you decide that you're going to go and build out the EMEA market and become a Chelsea fan, right? Well, I believe
that's a fact.
Which, if my memory serves me correctly, was done by a test online, wasn't it?
That's where it started.
Lovely.
No, I was sold on Chelsea on the River Thames for New Year's, which turned into being a season ticket holder not too long after. But yeah.
Love that.
Which I was thrilled about. Yeah, we'd gotten to 25 million or so at Glint, And we started to, we had a customer in EMEA, a big customer, kind of an anchor tenant, if you will, who was happy. And we started to get some other signals in Europe that maybe it was the time for us to invest resources and some effort in trying to win that market and get there faster than maybe competition could get there. So we sat around as an executive team and talked about the market and what it was going to take and who was going to go do it. There's one of two decisions that can get made there. Either one of us goes and does it and goes, build the team, or you hire from the outside and make a bet that that person will fit and mesh with the great culture that you've built to this point. I had never done the international thing prior to that. My wife and I were in a position to be able to go and do it. And so I raised my hand and said, let me go do it. I've got the playbook. I know exactly what it's going to take to go win business there and do it fast. It was a great move. It was a lot of fun. We grew, upwards of 10 million in ARR, in about a year, quickly. One of the strategies that we used, actually, or that I used to make sure it was the safest bet possible, is I had one of our top salespeople at the time, a guy named Fraser Aiken. Keep an eye on him. Fraser was managing a territory for us in Chicago at the time. He's also a British citizen. He was born and raised in the UK. So I said, I'd like for you to spend half of your time in Chicago, right? And then the other half trying to figure out if now is the time for us to go to the UK. So let's get into some opportunities and let's go figure out if we can go win business over there. And it took less than 6 months for him to realize actually that, the time is now. So when we decided to do it, one of the things I advise companies on, especially when thinking about global expansion and moving into new markets, is when you go, invest. Don't just stick your toe in the water. Go, because you should have enough data and evidence to support the fact that you're going to make an attempt. You might as well go for it. Yeah. And if you've got the right people in place, your bet can be pretty well assured. So I moved Fraser there to the UK to be our first salesperson on the ground. We had a customer success person there already managing our big anchor tenant account, and we started to build from there. I moved shortly after Fraser moved over to the UK, and we set up shop. And 50 people later, and it grew fast.
And how did you find that? Because obviously we know that every region, whether it's Central Europe or Southern Europe or Northern Europe, they all have a different go-to-market strategy. But how did you personally adapt to that different cultural situation?
I honestly didn't see a ton of nuance across those different regions in Europe. Like, we didn't have to change our pricing model at all, to adapt. Different cultures certainly do business a bit differently. For example, Germany, we had a little bit more rigorous in terms of, some security things we had to be doing and so on. So we had to adapt and set the right expectations in terms of deal flow and all of those things, depending on kind of the theater you're working in. I actually experienced in Singapore. I saw it more there, where there are emerging markets that are much more price sensitive, and you've got to really change the way you do things in APAC, more so I think than in Europe, in my experience.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's some places like in countries like Germany, it's very, very channel orientated, and it's more of a sell through rather than a sell to.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's but yeah.
The thing for us, though, let me I'll stop here just briefly there. Drill down on this one a little bit more. In all of these different theaters that you choose to work in, the competition's different too. So it's a whole new learning process. When we moved to Europe, there were some tech competitors there that were emerging that hadn't necessarily gotten to the United States yet. So, we were dealing with a little bit of a different selling situation, a little bit of a different competitive mix, if you will. We didn't necessarily have to tweak what we were doing, but we had to acknowledge that, we were going to run into some new competitors that we had to get really familiar with, and we did.
Yeah.
So in those kind of competitive markets, right? You spoke earlier a little bit about negotiating decision criteria. I think I just want you to kind of just go through a little bit more about that, because I think especially in situations like that in kind of new markets, these are the kind of core pillars that you, again, rely on to really get you out of trouble. So it'd be really good for you to share a bit more about that.
Yeah. If you're in a situation where, you're in an established market with entrenched competition, maybe some emerging tech players, crowded space. I mean, at Glint, probably had 25 competitors. An RFP would go out to 25, 30 different companies that said they do employee engagement. Cream always rises to the top. We always got down selected. One of the things as part of the playbook, if you are in a situation like that, having a highly professional RFP team answering the call on qualified inbound activity like that is well worth the investment, in my opinion. But in a situation where you've got a lot of competition, you have got to be able to articulate what your unique and holistic differentiation is as a company to kind of get through the noise. And every customer, doesn't matter what you're selling, has either a formal or an informal scorecard they use to assess you as a potential supplier of products or services to them. I get asked all the time, out of Medic, what do you think is the most important thing? At Glint, the most important thing for our salespeople, again, learn through personal firsthand experience in running sales cycles, was owning the decision criteria was the surest way to lock out competition, own the scorecard, and win the business, win the deal. So learn in detail all of the things that need to be on that scorecard or that shopping list, called decision criteria, and help the customer, create, that scorecard. And so that for us, and that for me has been number one. 1A and 1A prime is champion development. But decision criteria has been, critical for us to cut through the noise.
That's intrinsic, isn't it? Because the champion obviously is going to be the key source to get to that decision criteria.
Enabler. Yeah. It's hard to get to decision criteria without having a strong champion, for sure.
And so how do you go about creating that criteria then? So, just take us through a little bit about that process. So what are you actually doing?
Well, I start with the end in mind, knowing that, there are certain capabilities that are going to be required for the customer to solve the pain that they're having. So, one, understand that. Two, understand what your capabilities are in alignment to solving the customer's problem. And then three, understanding how your capabilities are different from your competition. So it's really that simple. Simply said, executed is a lot of hard work. But if you can do it, you can pretty well assure tremendous amount of success and win rate which we had at Glint as a result of owning decision criteria as much as we possibly could.
Oh, I thought you were about to say something there, Simon. So obviously pasture's new, right? We're now in a position where I suppose when we last spoke, there was a looking to open a new chapter. Are you far into that process now? Is there kind of decisions? Can we be expecting anything being announced?
No, nothing imminent. I'm doing a lot of listening, doing a lot of research, talking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I definitely have another one in me. I'm really hungry and motivated to do something really big. And I have the luxury of patience, or being able to practice some patience in this process. So, yeah, I'm taking my time and I'm being thoughtful about, the things that are important to me, and but nothing imminent.
Scott, what is it that you believe is going to, what are the things that are important to you when you assess the right opportunity?
Yeah, I have a list, and I stay really true to the list, to my own decision criteria, to the shopping list, because I know it works. It works for me. One of those things is, to be in a big, multi-tiered, vertically agnostic market. The thing with Glint was employee engagement as an industry was pretty big. The selling opportunity was massive because any company of any sort of size needed what we did. They wanted what we did. And so that, to me, was a kind of a prime sales arena, if you will, for us to go dabble in and figure out where we were going to play and where we weren't going to play. So big market, multi-tiered, vertically agnostic. I don't want to get pigeonholed into a vertical. I don't want to get pigeonholed into, being a small, medium-sized business, kind of provider, or something along those lines. In fact, at Glint, we started life selling to small and medium-sized businesses because that's what we had access to. But when we eventually got ourselves into some enterprise accounts, our architecture of our products and services, our vision was mapped really well to solving enterprise class problems. And if we could get ourselves there into that arena, we were going to face less pricing pressure and less, tech providers ankle biting, and being able to take out, a lot of manual consulting companies that were doing this work for many years and doing great work, but, sign of the times was let's modernize this approach. And so when we were able to get into the enterprise, that was an inflection point for us, and it changed everything: profile, sales process, all of it. But first 9 months was all about learning and getting dirty, as I've mentioned before. I think too, when you're assessing opportunities or looking at deals, understanding that the pain that this solution or product is solving is well understood, and the timing is right. There's a lot of companies out there that have really good ideas that weren't well timed, and as a revenue leader, that can be a nightmare. You have investors and you have product teams and you have really passionate founders of some of these companies that believe so much in their product and service that it's going to change the world. But if it's ill-timed, it's going to be a slog to get that into the market. So timing is really important, as many of us have heard before. I really pay attention to board members, especially, for what I do. I like the early stage growth stuff. So investors into these companies and the board members themselves are a really critical part of, the success or failure of these companies. And I look for an alignment with those board members in terms of their sales knowledge, in terms of their B2B SaaS knowledge, in terms of their operating experience and what they actually bring to the boardroom in terms of advice. I've seen before where some board members, go to the meetings, don't add a lot of value, write the check. But companies, this is a team sport, and companies need advice along the way, and board members can be really great sources for that. And we had a world-class board at Glint for sure. So I pay particular attention to that, and I insist on meeting those key board members, having very direct conversations with them about how they think about sales, how they think about revenue, what they think about the true prospect of the company. And one thing I've learned over the years too is prior to board meetings, when you do join these types of companies, there are some board members that are going to want to dive really deep into the KPIs of the business. And my advice is to not let the board meeting rat hole on KPIs like that, but to kind of have a pre-meeting with those that are interested to answer any questions, to go through those numbers prior to those board meetings. That'd be my advice. That's worked well. Try to understand the incumbent competition a bit. Who are you going to be facing? What does it look like? Learn as much as you can about the industry. And learn not from the company or the investors themselves, but other third parties, media and analysts who are covering the space. Is it really a thing? Is it really going to break out? Does it really need to be solved right now? This all goes to timing, And if I can't understand what the company does in 5 slides or less, I'm out. I'm out. I look at websites and I look at a lot of deals, and if what they're trying to do cannot be clearly articulated to somebody like me, that's a problem. That either needs to get rectified, or you're going to have a serious messaging issue down the road. And so I have a 5-slide rule, and if you can't explain what you're doing in 5 slides or less, then I eject, essentially. There are a lot of first-time CEOs in these growth companies or these early stage companies, and that's all well and good. They're going to be usually the passionate product folks that are really smart. And you have to ask yourself, how well surrounded is this CEO with the kinds of advice that they're going to need to build a great company, right? Seen time and time again where CEOs get replaced 2 years into the deal because now it's time for a professional CEO to come in and run the business. To me, that can be disruptive. That can be disruptive to the employee population. That can be disruptive to everything that you've done up to that point. And I look for situations where the less disruption, the better. And, some really great lessons learned at Glint, in terms of Jim Barnett's philosophy, in terms of building teams. And our executive team at Glint is still together today, 6 years in. That cohesion and that trust amongst that group is a huge reason why that company's been so successful. And that's foundational to me. I think the other, the one last thing I'll point out here in terms of what I'm looking for is, can I wake up in the morning really excited to go to work? Like, I'm so passionate about what this problem, what the solution is, what problem, this is solving, that, I can get people excited about it, in all my interactions with either the customers or employees or anybody. I think that's really important, to be able to identify with the problem that's being solved, because maybe you've experienced it firsthand. It gives you a lot more credibility. So those are just a few of the things that I look for.
Great. So I suppose one of the, it's always good to understand a little bit about the person behind the big titles and the success. So Scott, do you get any downtime? Do you enjoy any kind of personal? Obviously, you are at the moment. But
I got a lot of time.
How do you keep yourself focused and charged when you're in it?
I have a learning mindset. I'm constantly trying to learn something new or enhance a skill I may already have. I'm teaching myself guitar as an example right now, online, YouTube. I've dusted off the golf clubs, and I've dug into maybe trying to improve my golf game a little bit, although I don't play all that often, but I've played more recently than I have in a long time. In fact, I built a little driving range in the back of my house with a launch monitor and all that stuff. I'm getting very scientific, but it's all in the process of, learning something new or improving on something that I've been doing for a long time. I'm a pretty voracious reader. I try to stay in tune with markets and what's going on. And I'm doing a lot of mentorship right now. So there are a lot of budding sales professionals out there that are primed and ready to kind of get into sales leadership situations. And I have some of those at Glint and other places where, I'm doing a little coaching along the way. And that to me is a lot of fun.
That's amazing. That's really, really great. So I suppose the final question we always go with, Scott, is does the hunter make the unicorn?
Well, I mentioned before, building companies is a team sport. And to me, it is a sport, by the way. It is a competition. Hunters definitely play a significant role in creating the unicorn. However, that executive team and the cohesion of that executive team as a collective doing what they do best, when that works and that clicks, that's what creates a great lasting company. And so, yes, of course, running the sales function and owning revenue is critical to getting, top line and getting the money in the door and funding all of the things you want to do as a business. But, there's so much that goes on as a team, as a collective, that helps us sell more, that helps us achieve our goals. So I look at it as, I'm a member of a really great team. And I don't think that I stand out any more than anybody else on the team in terms of, responsibility and or, accolades or purpose or anything like that. This is a team effort. That's the way I think about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Scott, I suppose it's probably a good place to kind of give a bit of a summary of what we've discovered today. So to me, I think there's some kind of three main themes that I, want to kind of share, as a kind of reflection. Now, the series is very much around the 33 CxOs. So we always try and look at the kind of the common values, the common traits, which have created this incredible, improbable success that we've seen. And when we look at yourself coming from PTC, BladeLogic, and what you've taken from that, what's absolutely evident to me is the mastery of your craft and that maniacal, almost borderline obsession of being on top of your process, understanding qualification methodology like Medic, has given you the flexibility to be able to create a process of your own and a playbook of your own that you can adapt. And it's only with that mastery and being so in tune with what it can and can't do that it allows you to roll your sleeves up, get dirty, and discover what you need to do in order to adapt that playbook and generate the results that you go on to create. Now, on top of that, I think that in order for it to be worth your while to roll the sleeves up, it also has to be something you're very passionate about. And at the end of the day, if the mission is not something that you can get up in the morning and really be excited about making a difference and making sure that you are solving big problems, but also really enjoying that challenge and surrounding yourself by people that inspire you, whether that's your team, but also you talk a lot about the executives and choosing the right executives and surrounding yourself with the right mentors. This is the source. And again, you know, we've heard your story, and I think there are so many parallels in what we've heard from other people. But Scott, I just want to say it's been fantastic having you on the show. We've really, really enjoyed. I'm sure our listeners have taken so much from what we've heard today. So a big thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, jumped in there. No, I really appreciate you coming on the show and spending so much time and giving our viewers and us such an insightful kind of understanding of you and your playbook. Thank you, Scott.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for the platform. Yeah, thank you for the platform and sharing the journey a little bit. You know, my hope here is that people can learn from some of these experiences and go out and do some great things and build great companies, you know, and I think that'd be a great win.
Wonderful.